Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely pumped to dive into today's topic. When we pull those sleek, shiny smartphones out of our pockets, or we boot up that magical software we use every single day, it's incredibly easy to just assume they sprang into existence perfectly formed. Like magic, right? But the actual truth? Modern tech, and honestly practically all the products we love, are built from incredibly messy but highly structured iterations. So today, we're exploring exactly that in Monkey See, Monkey Prototype, the art of iterative innovation.
But before we really get into the nuts and bolts of how products are designed, I want you to just stop and think about something for a second. What if the revolutionary, highly advanced tech you're using right now is actually just a human pulling levers behind a curtain? I know, it sounds kind of like a sci-fi movie, but keep that thought tucked away, because the reality of how things are actually made might just completely shatter your illusions about the products you trust the most.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. Beyond the rough draft.
So what exactly is a prototype? Simply put, it's an early version of a product that's used to test ideas, sniff out problems, gather feedback, and ultimately improve the whole thing before it actually gets released to the public. And I really want to emphasize a crucial distinction here. A prototype is a testable version of an idea. It's an interactive tool for learning. It is definitely not just a cool drawing you hang up on a whiteboard or a fun conceptual brainstorm. To make this crystal clear, let's compare it to a rough draft. A draft is all about improving content. Think tweaking the paragraphs in an essay, or adjusting the shading on a piece of art, or refining a concept. A prototype, on the other hand, tests functionality and user experience. It's literally the difference between describing how a door works on a piece of paper and physically building a cardboard door to see if people actually know whether to push it or pull it.
Moving right along to Section 2, the evolution of ideas.
The journey of an idea usually follows a pretty clear narrative arc. Step 1 is usually a quick sketch or a storyboard. Imagine just scribbling some smartphone shapes on a diner napkin to get the visual out of your head. Then we hit Step 2, the paper prototype. This is where a designer might draw actual screens on pieces of paper and ask a user to physically tap the paper to see how they'd interact with it. Step 3 takes us digital, with wireframes and mock-ups. Think of those as the black and white boxes on a screen that eventually get colored in with realistic designs. And finally, Step 4, the MVP, or minimum viable product. This is the absolute simplest version of the product that actually works in the real world. A perfect example of an MVP? Early Instagram. When it first launched, there were no stories, no DMs. The whole shebang was just posting a photo. That's it. Just the simplest core function to see if people even wanted it.
Now, throughout all these steps, creators are constantly wrestling with one major trade-off: low fidelity versus high fidelity. Low fidelity prototypes, they're fast, they're super cheap, and they're rough, like those paper models we talked about. High fidelity prototypes are detailed and hyper-realistic, like a fully polished digital mock-up. So if you're building something, you're constantly weighing speed against accuracy, trying to figure out exactly how realistic your prototype needs to be just to get the data you're looking for.
And all of this builds up to two massive milestones on the prototyping journey. First up, the proof of concept, or POC. This just proves that your crazy idea can actually work on a technical level. For instance, imagine you're building a prototype robot arm. If that thing successfully picks up an object, boom, that's a successful POC, even if it looks like a total pile of junk with wires sticking out everywhere. Then you reach the minimum marketable feature, or MMF. This is where we pivot from engineering brain to business brain. The MMF asks one question: what is the absolute smallest, most basic feature that users will actually open their wallets and pay for?
All right, on to Section 3, real-world prototyping messiness, because it is definitely not always pretty.
Let's talk about the original Apple iPhone. Today, we think of it as this sleek, gorgeous slab of glass that completely changed the world. But those early prototypes, they were bulky, they crashed constantly. Some of them genuinely didn't even look like phones. They were these crude, Frankenstein-type machines that existed for one reason: testing touchscreen responsiveness, battery life, and the basic interface. And this brilliantly illustrates our point here. The final product looks impossibly elegant, but the behind-the-scenes process to get there? Yeah, beautifully, wonderfully messy.
And the wild thing is, today, that messy process is basically available to everyone. We've got maker spaces in middle schools, cheap 3D printers, and incredibly powerful simulation tools you can run on a laptop. It's a total game changer because anyone can build a prototype now. But it's definitely a double-edged sword. The huge upside is that innovation happens at lightning speed. The downside? Well, when the barrier to entry is that low, the market gets completely flooded with low-quality, half-baked, poorly tested ideas.
Which brings us to the big twist. Section 4, faking it to make it.
Have you ever heard of Wizard of Oz testing? Just like the classic movie, it's a testing method where users are interacting with something they genuinely believe is a fully automated, high-tech piece of software or hardware. But in reality, there's a hidden human behind the curtain, manually pulling the levers and typing the responses. Let me ask you, would you be mad if you found out the cutting-edge AI you were testing was actually just a guy named Dave taking notes behind a two-way mirror?
And hey, this is not some new Silicon Valley trick either. Consider the Mechanical Turk. This was a super famous historical artifact from way back that claimed to be a revolutionary fully automated chess-playing machine. People were absolutely mind-blown by its quote-unquote artificial intelligence. But the truth? It was literally a wooden box with a human chess master crammed inside, secretly moving the pieces from below, the ultimate original fake-it-till-you-make-it.
If you're sitting there thinking, well, surely we've outgrown that in the 21st century, think again. Let's look at Amazon's Just Walk Out stores. They were pitched as these magical, frictionless retail wonders. Cameras and sensors do all the work, you just grab a sandwich and bail, right? Well, as we eventually learned, they heavily relied on a massive army of hidden human workers behind the scenes, manually reviewing the video footage just to make this automated system actually function.
This illusion is absolutely everywhere in the tech world today. Take Fireflies.ai, which is a super popular meeting tool right now. They initially used real, actual humans to write the meeting notes before their AI was actually smart enough to do it reliably. And remember Elon Musk's early humanoid robot demo? It wasn't some cutting-edge functional prototype. It was famously just a human dancing around in a spandex robot costume. So many of the most impressive AI products we rave about today started off as entirely human-powered illusions.
And now, we're stepping into this wild, completely new territory that people are calling vibe coding. With tools like OpenAI, you can build entire apps almost instantly without knowing a single line of code. You basically just describe the vibe of what you want and the AI builds it. This totally bridges the gap between those human-faked prototypes and AI-generated ones. But naturally, it creates a massive new problem. Instant prototypes mean we are drowning in products that have literally zero quality control.
So where does this leave us? Section 5, Progress versus Honesty.
So the crucial point here is that rapid prototyping, especially when we heavily rely on these fake-it-till-you-make-it tactics, has some incredibly clear advantages. You get much faster innovation, way lower costs, you can run tons of experiments, and you get that vital early feedback. But we absolutely cannot ignore the disadvantages. It definitely encourages lazy shortcuts, it has a massive potential to mislead users, and like we said, it can totally flood the market with low-quality junk.
And this brings us right to a huge ethical gray area about misleading users. Is it actually okay to trick people with a Wizard of Oz test? Well, the general industry consensus is that, yeah, it's mostly acceptable during the early testing phase, as long as it's temporary and the data is genuinely being used to improve the real product. But it becomes incredibly problematic and honestly unethical if users are being harmed, or if you keep the deception going when you're actually taking their money, or if a company refuses to admit their demos are completely fake when they start scaling up. It's this razor-thin balance between transparency, which builds trust, and secrecy, which protects fragile innovation. Ultimately, it all comes down to intent versus impact.
So to tie this all together, we really have to realize that prototyping isn't just about hot gluing physical products or typing lines of code. It's about testing reality. It's about reducing your risk and learning as fast as humanly possible. But doing that forces every single creator to navigate three massive core tensions: innovation versus honesty, speed versus quality, and access versus responsibility.
At the end of the day, the most important question isn't whether prototypes should exist at all. We know for sure we need them. But as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with this thought to just kind of chew on. How much imperfection and even deception are we willing to tolerate in exchange for progress? It is a fascinating, tricky line to walk, and honestly, it really changes how you look at every single revolutionary new product that hits the market. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today to explore the art of iterative innovation. Stay curious, keep questioning those levers behind the curtain, and I will see you next time.